Following the 1940s and the rise of women's activist groups and sexual identity politics, American English saw the adoption of a number of manufactured terms and concepts that had never existed prior in human history. These terms and concepts splintered men and masculinity, fracturing what was once a powerful, cohesive force in American society into multiple conceptual, weakened groups. Let's now dive into the top 10 terms that, since their creation and adoption post-1940s, have dealt the most damage to men's unity. Toxic masculinity. This umbrella term is used as a catch-all to stereotype and convey a spectrum of masculine expression as negative behaviors. This term of convenience generalizes the diverse manifestations of manhood and paints these traits as uniformly destructive behaviors. Utilized in its worst form, the term can be used as a tool by men to police other men. Male privilege. While the stated aim of this term is to address systemic imbalances, its use glosses over the intricate web of privilege that intertwines factors like race, class, and sexual activity. By painting all men with the broad brush of privilege, it conveniently excludes the experiences of those who struggle due to these other factors. This can foster division among men, as it suggests a uniform experience that does not consider the diverse realities of men. Homosexual. Invented in the late 1800s and embraced by psychiatrists, this manufactured term sought to categorize men based on their sexual activities alone, thereby compartmentalizing the male gender into convenient subgroups. In the decades following, this concept has fragmented men and increasingly introduced the idea of otherness among them, taking precedence over their shared gender experience. It has reduced the complex identity of a man to merely his sexual activities alone, drawing damaging lines of division between men and simplified how we view individual men and their worth. Fragile masculinity. By characterizing any concern over masculine identity as an indicator of fragility, this term intentionally cultivates a culture of shame and stigma targeted at men. It artificially sets a rigid standard for masculinity and classifies any deviation from it as a weakness. Queer. This failed attempt to reclaim what was and is a derogatory term is used as a broad identifier for men who have sex with men and further extends the concept as a reductionist sexual identity. Like the term homosexual, it acts as a tool for segregation, identifying its own subgroup of men, the strange other, thereby fracturing men's unity. By focusing on and embracing this otherness, the term diverts from shared experiences and identities among men, fostering division rather than unity. Mansplaining. The term is intended to describe a specific kind of patronizing explanation often offered by men to women. In practice, it is a veiled exercise to stifle men's voices by communicating indirectly that women should not answer to male superiors in a chain of command, often within the workplace. Rather than encouraging fellow women to learn to communicate and debate at an equal level, use of the term fosters a manufactured stereotype of men's interactions, cultivating mistrust of men in positions of power. Gender fluid. This concept is used to describe individuals whose gender identity varies over time. While it claims to offer a more encompassing view of sexuality, in practice it causes divisions among men. By portraying sexuality as an endless array of identities, rather than as an activity, it dilutes shared experiences and communal bonds traditionally associated with being a man. It also introduces a sense of alienation among those who identify with their birth gender. Rather than fostering unity among men, the term introduces a hierarchy within manhood, discouraging unity by psychologically placing men outside of their own gender. Manspreading. Originally coined to criticize men taking up too much space on public transport, the term has evolved to become a wider social critique of men in general. By overgeneralizing men's behavior and mocking men's anatomy, the term intentionally cultivates an image of men as inherently disrespectful of shared spaces. It also reinforces stereotypes of men and men's bodies as things to be considered ugly and threatening. Gay. This term, intended to identify men who are attracted to other men, reduces down a man's identity to his sexual activities alone. This focus on a man's sexuality over all other aspects of his character like intellect or societal contributions engenders a simplistic perspective of men. This, in turn, leads to a sense of fragmentation within the male population, with one group indirectly portrayed as useful to women and the other set aside as an ostracized subgroup because it is considered not useful. By framing men's identities in this way, useful to women, or not useful to women, men's behaviors can be controlled through fear of association with the wrong subgroup. The damage caused to men's experiences since the term's popularization in the 1950s and 1960s is immeasurable. Coed. This term, short for coeducational, refers to the system of educating boys and girls together. While it was portrayed in the 1950s and 1960s as a means to promote gender integration and equality, it was in practice a divisive strategy. The dismantling of male-exclusive spaces in favor of co-ed environments disrupted the socialization of men by men, greatly limiting the spaces where boys and young men can learn about masculinity from male peers and role models. This resulted in younger generations of men absorbing more feminine sensitivities and perspectives. This shift has caused confusion, anger, and internal division, as boys and young men grapple with their identities in social milieus that view men and their bodies as threatening.